ad tech space. If you've heard of Magnite, this is kind of a complementary company to that that's kind of building out a supply side platform for the ad tech industry. He'll be showing up on our podcast here within the next week. We've got a couple other really good ones booked. I know that my colleague Max Chatko just interviewed Stanford's Drew Indy about synthetic biology. That was on the show today. Matt, you always have some good speakers that you enjoy chatting with. Anything that I'm leaving off here, Matt, that we should be talking about too?
Yeah, well, look, there's no way I'm going to pick my favorite. I really appreciate all the guests we've gotten. I would say I feel a special debt of gratitude to Tobias Carlisle and Peru Saxena. They came on last summer when we were just starting, and they were like my first two guests that I interviewed. And what was interesting about them, and since then too, because my own personally, I'm always trying to balance in companies I invest in, like their valuations, but also their quality. And to hear Tobias come from a valuation side, to hear Peru come from a growth side, and then since then too, like I interviewed Marcelo Lima last month on just like innovative companies and talked a lot about Apple and Facebook and some other great tech companies. This week coming out, we have an interview with Ryan Kruger, who just launched an ETF that's about growth of income, so it's income growth. And so it's companies that pay dividends, but that have a track record of growing them, but not just growing them nominally, like a 1 or 2 cent raise every year, but like that are growing them by double digits and have some real quality aspects to them too. So I've really enjoyed all the interviews I've done. I've learned a lot from a lot of the guests.
Yeah, guys, that's very exciting to hear. I look forward to all the future episodes. And based on the quality of guests that I had in the past, that was just mind blown. And you guys saying that the best yet to come. So I am exceptionally excited about this. So good to know. Thanks for sharing this information with us, guys. And just really quick for all the listeners, if you have a question to our amazing speakers today from 7Investing, just request to speak and I will bring you on. So you have an opportunity to ask this question live. And so while I'm waiting on some of the requests to ask this question, I just wanted to switch gears a little bit from investing and stock market, and just maybe each one of you guys can share. So let's just pretend it's a beautiful weekend. It's Saturday afternoon, great weather outside. Where can we find you?
I'll go first here. You can find me at the pool. Part of the reason I moved to Florida was access to pools and beaches, and I take full advantage of that. Simon, not quite the same in Texas there, right?
Same idea though, Dan. We try to escape the heat by finding water. I went to the beach this last weekend, Max. I'm in the Houston area, so it's not too far from the Gulf. I guess kind of like the pool out there in Dan, right? We don't have the iguanas and the geckos like you guys have in Florida.
I'll also point out that there's a decent chance I'm at a Disney theme park or occasionally even Universal. So this is a pretty cool place to live in. We are accessible to all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, we're all over the place too, Max. Like we said, Steve's up in Montana. Matt and Dan are in Florida. We've got myself and Dana in the Houston area. Max is in the Northeast. We were kind of spread out all over the country, which gives us a different view of the U.S., so to speak.
Yeah, I'm, as a fellow Floridian, spend a lot of my time on the beach as well. And I have a 5-year-old son, so he loves water. So we pretty much go there almost every other weekend. So water is definitely our best friend. So good to know. So let me see. I got a question, DM from one of my buddies on Twitter. His hashtag is tall seller, and he was wondering if any of you guys pay attention to the progress of DM Association. I think it's the world of cryptocurrency, and they have a blockchain as well. And what are your views on their potential of disrupting global commerce and payment industry? What do you guys think about this?
Go ahead, Simon. Why don't you feel this? You're more fluent on crypto than I am.
And then I wanted to hand it to you too, Matt, for the second part of the question about how you thought that might impact the grander scheme of things. I have a huge I think that there's a lot of potential, Max, for cryptocurrencies. And this goes to the fundamental blockchain itself, rather than just the tokens. Everyone's kind of obsessing over the current price of Bitcoin. This is one that we talk a lot with our partners, Crypto EQ. 7Investing, we tend to focus on the equity side of this equation and how cryptocurrencies are going to impact companies like Square, companies like Tesla that are loading them up on their balance sheet, or they're allowing transactions to take place with cryptocurrencies. You're starting to see that more and more be adopted by the corporations, right? Like businesses are actually finding ways to use cryptocurrencies or put them as a replacement for cash on their balance sheet. I think that for me, and I'll hand this to Matt to hear his opinion on this too, but for me, the real question is going to be the institutional side of this. You've got tens of billions of dollars in these target date retirement funds with Fidelity, or anybody who's got a 401k with kind of some options with whoever their provider is. Stuff like this is where the real money is for cryptocurrencies, and there is a necessary first step of regulation, and make sure that you're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's before you can actually get those institutional investors on board. But when people are saying, hey, I can get a guaranteed 6 or 7 or 8 or 10% return on a cryptocurrency versus cash, which is maybe, if you're lucky, in the best of times, returning 1% interest rates, there's going to be a lot of people that are really going to be interested in that. And I think that's going to support a much higher price for a lot of the larger cryptocurrencies out there. Matt, what do you think though about like the bigger picture impact of the financial system?
It's still such early innings. It's really hard to know, and I hate to like cop out on that. Blockchain-based cryptocurrencies, they definitely offer security features that are difficult for like the payment networks to match. Now the thing is, as far as like usability, so like if you talk about store of value, like I don't know, I'm just going to take a complete pass. But if you talk about like usability, I mean, remember Bitcoin can only process, I think it's less than 10 transactions per second. When you compare that to like MasterCard and Visa's networks, which can process or facilitate 65,000 transactions per second. There's a huge difference. But like that being said, like other blockchain cryptocurrencies, they've proven able to process up to like, I think 15, 20,000 transactions per second, which at least gets in that neighborhood of MasterCard and Visa. The other thing too is competition to like the payment networks or like financial networks might not just come from decentralized cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, but also from like central bank issued digital currencies. Like last October, the Bank of International Settlements, which is like 7 central banks, which includes the Federal Reserve, but also like Japan's bank, Canada, England, they issued a report and they laid out this framework like that would be needed for such currencies to work. And they didn't like recommend it, but they just said like, if a central bank wanted to issue currencies like cryptocurrencies, like this is how it could work. And it would be like things like they had to coexist with cash, they had to support monetary stability, they had to promote innovation. So, that's still a long way from these countries issuing currencies, but the idea is clearly being considered by governments and banks around the world. And one of these countries, I forget now, man, like my memory's just slipping, but one already did it. Like when, if you ask like MasterCard CEO or Visa management, like about like, when they're asked about the possibility of central bank digital currencies, they talk up like how they have a history of working with governments and how they can, incorporate governments into like their networks, which they already do in a lot of countries. So does that give them a leg up? Maybe. And plus you have the ubiquity of their networks too. So it's really early. I'm not ready to say like cryptocurrencies are going to disrupt like MasterCard or Visa. But I'm also not going to rule out that possibility either. It's something to watch, and it's really early. So I'm just trying to keep an open mind about it.
Dan, are you okay with me paying you in Dogecoin this month? How do you feel about crypto?
I am less positive about crypto than everyone else. It's not that I don't believe it has potential. I just tend to not invest in things I don't understand. And I've listened to podcasts, I've listened to all of you. I understand the fundamentals of blockchain, but to me it's air and it's kind of magic. And I don't generally invest in companies that are going to have crazy, wild, 50, 60% swings. So I have a very small exposure to a couple of different cryptocurrencies only because I wanted to see what the experience was like to buy them and to track them. But for me, it falls way outside my core competency.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest risks, like you just said, Dan, is the volatility in this. I mean, Max, you know, when Elon Musk said funding secured for Tesla, that cost him the chairmanship of Tesla, right? That was something that was a no-no, that the SEC brought the hammer down on him. But this is not regulated. The cryptocurrencies are not regulated in the same way that securities, equity securities are regulated, right? Like he can go out there and pump Dogecoin and do whatever he wants to. Anybody can do this with a decent sized following, and that's going to impact the pricing of these pretty significantly. So it's kind of the Wild West out there right now.
Yeah, and Simon, it's important to note that Steve will be using cryptocurrency to pay for all of his criminal activity. So that is very important. This isn't public, so this should be okay.
We already knew that, Dan. We were trying to keep that on the DL. The other big thing that I just wanted to mention is that there's a million Bitcoins that are in Satoshi Nakamoto's anonymous address right now, and they haven't been touched since they were initially mined and issued. That is what I consider a long tail risk. That if that gets touched, if he starts selling those or anything happens to those, that's kind of like a giant landmine that everyone is going to head for the exits for. We haven't seen that, and we don't know who Satoshi is or who they are. But I think that that's something else you got to kind of keep in mind, that this anonymous creator of Bitcoin is holding about a 5% stake of what is just continued to go up the entire time. There's still a lot of uncertainty of who or what Satoshi is and what they plan to do with that million Bitcoin hoard.
The other interesting development, Simon, was that the pipeline that paid the ransomware in Bitcoin like a few weeks ago, the federal government came out like, was it yesterday, and said like they had seized or recovered a lot of those Bitcoin, which is very interesting. And I wonder if that's going to like turn off a lot of people to Bitcoin, if there is some sort of, if the government does have more reach into this, like the cryptocurrency realm than was previously believed.
Yeah, guys, I wanted to ask about a particular crypto. It's called DIEM. I think it's been created back in 2017 by one of the Facebook developers, and it was called Libra.
I don't think any of us are crypto experts enough to comment on specific cryptos. I think that's probably fair to say. We generally traverse in the stock market world, and we are partners with Crypto EQ. So that certainly we do a podcast with them where they can be the experts on stuff like that. But Simon, stop me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think we should go down that road.
Dan, I think that's the one. That was the one that used to be called Libra. Is that right, Max?
Yes,
yes. It was a Facebook backed. Yeah,
the Facebook backed one, exactly.
Yeah, so I think it's a real interesting project. Like, I think I actually kind of think there might be more of a future for permissioned or, centralized blockchain-based payment systems than decentralized ones. But I think there's a lot of pros and cons to each. But I think a lot of pros are forgotten when people talk about decentralized currencies. Like, I think they forget about a lot of the pros that come with having a centralized like currency, and to have like an authorizing or authoritative board overseeing things, I think can come with a lot of pros. So I actually think it's a real interesting experiment.
Yeah, one thing that particularly caught my attention that I've seen that one of the huge team members from Shopify joined their team of developers and was actively participating in its development. And I was just wondering how maybe they could incorporate this into Shopify payment solutions in the future. So that would be interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like with someone like Facebook backing it, like, if Facebook wants to open up commerce, you already could have like a huge market right out of the gates for it, which is, again, like, I think I'm not predicting success by any means, but I think there's a lot of interesting aspects to it. And I'm not all ready to call it out. I thought it was very interesting when it was called Libra, and I haven't paid attention to it too much in the last few months. but I think the experiment is definitely, it has potential, no doubt about it.
Right. So, and if I can add to that, it's DM, right? And it's sort of a big facelift from what Libra was. And when they first introduced it, that was part of the reason Facebook's reach was part of the reason it was met with so much scrutiny, right? Because the governments around the world were like, oh, crap, like Facebook has what? 3 billion monthly active users, and they're concerned that it's going to basically upend their own currencies and destabilize economies by messing with global currencies. So definitely an interesting project and something to watch. But I can't say with any semblance of confidence whether I'd be comfortable buying it. Should it actually be added to platforms?
Yeah, and Max, just to add one more thing on this too is, we chatted about it as a team about this kind of colonial pipeline ransom payment that the FBI was able to recover a lot of those Bitcoins from the addresses, the transaction. This is where the hackers demanded Bitcoin. They said, $5 million worth of Bitcoin, send it to this address. FBI goes in and actually recovers a lot of those that were paid. And so, interestingly, what we were talking about as a team is we saw the price of Bitcoin plummet right after this event happened, right? Like maybe because regulators were able to go in there and break and kind of track everything. This is Bitcoin growing up in a way that you need to have something like that to have stability for the larger financial system. Short-term blip here in the short term for the price of Bitcoin, but you got to have stuff like that if you actually want to have any kind of security of using this for transactions out there.
So Simon, let me jump in because, so I have a background in manufacturing. I know that sounds preposterous, but my family owns a fairly big ladder and scaffolding company, and I worked there for 4 years running a factory. So here's the problem. If a currency isn't relatively stable, it becomes really difficult to price. So if I'm going to make product X, let's call it a 32-foot ladder, and I'm buying those items in a relatively stable US currency, obviously the price of the commodity goes up, the price of the commodity goes down, the value of the dollar can move a little bit. But with some of these cryptocurrencies, if you're paying me in something that tomorrow might be worth 20% less, that becomes very difficult to price. So I actually think until we see some long-term stability, it's going to be more gimmick than reality. It's not quite as gimmicky as the days of the Bitcoin pizza places, but for the most part, there's a reason why we have the financial system we have, and I'm not saying it can't be disrupted, but you have to prove to the people spending money to make the goods that they're not going to see sort of wild fluctuation in the value of the currency they receive.
Great point.
I was about to say, Simon, that's a great point, Daniel, that you make. Thank you so much. Well, I just added Jason as a speaker. Jason, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Max. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks for taking the time here, guys. I just had a quick question. We're going to take it back to the equities market here a little bit. But you say you're focused in on long-term investing and looking at that. So I'm just curious, what spaces that you're most excited to kind of look at over the next, let's say, 5 to 20 years. I don't know how long term you're talking here, but either particular businesses or more specifically just sectors that you're really interested. I'll turn the mic over now. Thanks.
Do you guys all want to chime in with one? Maybe we can kind of give Jason 4 answers to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be perfect, actually.
All right, I could start. I mean, my background's in artificial intelligence, right? And like Simon mentioned, I'm a recovering software engineer, and I was doing machine learning stuff way back in the day. So I'm naturally maybe predisposed to being excited about the role of artificial intelligence in business, and you'll see a lot of that reflected in my recommendations at 7Investing. So AI, machine learning, their ability to ingest big data also comes into play, and also the ability to better inform robotics markets as well. So those are areas that I'm really excited about seeing, because I feel like in a lot of those areas, specifically AI and robotics, that we're sort of, especially given the massive increases in computing power, we've sort of reached this inflection point, in my opinion, where it actually starts to make a significant difference in its effectiveness. So AI robotics for me.
Yeah, I'll jump in next, and then Matt can jump in after. So it's going to sound strange, but for me, it's entertainment. We're at this massive point where we don't know where movie theaters are going. Cable is dying, and maybe cable is returning in terms of how many streaming services we're buying and how frustrating that is. So I think we're seeing the value of intellectual property. We're seeing a lot of deals that don't make much sense because people are trying to amass intellectual property. So I do think you're going to see some really big opportunities in, some very straightforward companies like your Disneys and your Netflixes and your Rokus. But I think there's also some upstart companies that aren't even on our radar yet that are going to look at how we consume things and figure that out. I know right now, if you have 10 different streaming services like I do, or 4 or 5 like most people do, it's somewhat difficult to find your content. It doesn't work that well. So I think there are a lot of actual problems to be solved. And while I don't think it's going to be the 100 bagger, I actually am also really excited about retail innovation. I think we're seeing the difference between companies that know how to plan and really had an eye on the future and companies that sort of just believed. It's the difference between Target and Sears, and that's really starting to shake out. And the pandemic obviously accelerated that. Matt.
Sure. Like the first thing I would say is don't, as an investor, don't ever get tunnel vision. Don't always just focus on one industry or one sector to the exclusion of everything else. Any company with an economic moat or sustainable competitive advantage can give you, as an investor, incredible returns. That being said, how can you be alive today and not be like totally amazed by how technology has transformed our world, right? And so as a very broad answer, just seeing how like from when I was a kid to like how I am now as a middle-aged adult, like the transformations we've seen in every sector as technology has come to bear. Specifically, for me, that's usually like in the financial technology or fintech, as it's commonly called. I just love to see like how like so many of these traditional financial services that are inefficient, expensive, and slow be transformed. And I think there's a long way to go on that. It's more secure. So I love watching the fintech space, but just in general, just to see technology disrupt one industry after another, first with digital transformation, and then like as Steve said, at like other things like AI or machine learning to come on top of that and transform it even more. It's an exciting time to be alive. I mean, to see space travel, like in the next 20 years, you see what these companies are doing now. We're going to see so much in space travel and just how we carry around these powerful computers in our pockets now, and just have like entertainment on demand by clicking something on on your phone. I mean, it's just amazing to see how technology has transformed our lives.
And I'll point out that Matt and I both remember clearly not having internet access or a cell phone. I remember how excited I was to get dial-up AOL access, just to date myself a little bit. We've come really, really far since then.
With that modem sound, Dan. The connecting modem sound.
Absolutely.
And to answer from my perspective, I'm a huge fan of disruptive innovation, and I think that the market that we're all going to be talking about 1 year from now that no one is talking about right now is quantum computing. This is something that a lot of people are just thinking is a science project. It's very misunderstood out there. It's just kind of R&D phase. But then we just saw IonQ is now going to be coming public through a SPAC at a $2 billion valuation. And to put that into context, they did $1 million in revenue this last year, which means it's coming public at 2,000 times sales. How can that possibly, fathomably, even have a company go public at 2,000 times sales? And the answer is in the promise of quantum computing. And this is just going to be solving things so much more optimally, so much more efficiently, whether that could be developing materials, superconductive materials, whether that could be drug makers, solving really, really difficult things like protein folding and how molecules arrange themselves, optimization of how the world is going to travel around different countries. I mean, these things that we've done as good as we could for decades now can be optimally solved by quantum computers. And this is something that, less than 1% of businesses today, far less than 1% of businesses today, mature American businesses today are using quantum in any kind of capacity. And when you see a forecast out there like Gartner has made that says that 20% of global organizations are planning to budget for quantum projects by 2023, That's 2 years away from now. I mean, we're talking about a 20 to 30x increase across the board of American corporations that are going to be using quantum computing in some kind of capacity. I mean, that's the total hockey stick S curve, whatever description you want to use for that. That is something that's going to disrupt a whole lot of things. I really think that a year from now, we're going to be talking a lot more about quantum.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the areas that really excites me. So I 100% agree with you on this one, Simon. Great point. Great answers, guys. And Jason, thank you so much for the question. That was great. I just added Eric as a speaker. What's going on, Eric? Do you have a question?
Hi, yeah. So Simon, actually, your comment just now is what provoked this question, because I am a huge sci-fi nerd, and I think anyone who loves Disney, for example, Star Wars, Marvel, whatever it is on some level a massive sci-fi fan. And Ion Q, for example, was a major. As soon as I saw it coming public, I've always believed, if you want to understand where the world is going, look at what the private markets are doing for a good idea of where to put your bets. But my question is, how do you distinguish, if you look at something like quantum computing, which has been in the works now for 25, 30 years, how do you disseminate whether it's just a science project or is it investable? And what is your thought process behind that? And just as an example, IonQ came out, their announcement with DMYI, I think it is, was on the same day that Evolve announced that their deal with New Hold Investments, NHIC, was coming public. And it was like, they're both disruptors, but one is generating revenue and is in a sound business, and the other is, a ways away. So what's your thought process there with approaching that?
Well, there needs to be qubit stability first and foremost, Eric. These are really, really hard to actually keep the qubits stable, to actually have a functional quantum computer. There's a lot of error tolerance. You have to keep these in vacuums at very, very low temperatures. I mean, like at first, the reason this has been so challenging is just the physical limitations of a quantum computer, right? This is not just a faster CPU processor, a traditional computer. This is a completely different architecture machine that has been a challenge first and foremost to actually build this. Now that we're kind of getting to the phase where that is even possible, you're starting to see different approaches in how companies want to go after quantum computing. D-Wave Systems has been building quantum annealers for years, and they're trying to go in this one path, which is very different than ion traps, which is what like the Ion Q that you mentioned is going after. That's also what Honeywell, if you've seen Honeywell, has made some announcements that they've got quantum computers now. There's another company, Psi Quantum, is trying to do it with optics using light, which is completely different too. And that's going to be harder, but that could be, you could have 1,000 qubits if you had something like that. I mean, we're kind of now in phase 2 of quantum, figuring out which of these is going to be stable and which one of these is going to be useful. And then once we get to phase 3, it's going to be which of these is the most economical and reliable. And this is kind of how disruption works, right? You've got their super early adopters, the sci-fi nerds, like you just self-described yourself as, Eric, that really, really love the technology and think it's super, super cool. Steve doing machine learning back in 2004 before anyone else knew what it was. I mean, and then you kind of get an adoption of kind of these early adopters that are going to start applying this and using it. And then once that proves that it is functional, that this can have applications, then you get the majority. I mean, that's kind of where we're starting to see blockchains and Bitcoin today, where you've got the early adopters kind of getting into the mass market. Quantum's a couple steps behind that, but that's the basic progression of how these work.
Right. And I would add to that, one of the keys to determining whether any given quantum computing company is investable is how scalable and how modular its technology is in these early stages. And also, from a problem solving perspective, that really has to do with scalability, because a lot of times you look at people that claim quantum supremacy in any given problem. It's very, very, very specialized abilities to solve very specific problems, like a math problem, right? And I think you want to look at how well these companies solve an array of problems, which is, I think, what IonQ is looking to do, and they're also looking at like modular computers that can be networked together, and so really interesting companies there. But the effectiveness, modularity, and scalability are things that I'm looking at in that realm too.
Great point, Steve. I think that it's going to look a lot like cloud computing, where you're going to tap into some kind of UI that's going to allow you to access the quantum computer to do really, really hard problems.
Yeah, guys, that was great.
Thanks for the answers. Appreciate it. Real quick, on the same subject of sci-fi, so one thing that I'm also really curious to get your thoughts on, especially you, Steve, since your background is in machine learning, what are your thoughts on like simulation software and digital engineering assistants? Where do you see that going?
Simulation software in what sense, I guess?
Yeah, so I guess really like so there's a company that I'm an investor in. It's still in the private. It's a very young company, but it's called MSBAI, Microsurgeon Bot, and they're a digital engineering assistant, basically to help any engineer.
Oh, sure.
The way they describe it is kind of as like a Jarvis from Iron Man.
Yeah. I guess it really depends on the opportunity. In that sense, yeah, simulation technology. Again, needs to prove scalability, because it's easy to build very, very specific purpose driven simulations, but if you have something that can do that on a very broad scale, I feel like was that a crowdfunded opportunity, the privately held
equity crowdfunding
MSBAI.
on
Yeah, I'm vaguely familiar with them, but I think that's something I need to tackle on a case by case basis. When you look at especially software companies, the efficacy of their solutions in being able to solve, similar to quantum computing, a wide array of problems, and whether they have the optionality to expand their solutions to handle multiple problems in those spaces. But yeah.
And Steve, you got to remember, Jarvis led to Ultron. So we also, from a sci-fi point of view, want to be really careful here.
No. Yeah, there's a lot of fear about that, actually. I used to run in the artificial intelligence service at our old gig, and there's a surprising amount of fear with people that artificial intelligence is going to take over, and being able to control it in a sense, and ensure that it's not biased in its assumptions, and so yeah, that's an interesting point. But yes, Jarvis, Ultron, all that good stuff.
But between Terminator and Battlestar Galactica, I think we've had a lot of imagery that this could go wrong, and there are some things that, as all this stuff develops, we've talked about it on a very basic level with, say, automated driving, that the tolerances are going to be much lower than in the real world. There might be 30 crashes per 1,000, but if it's automated, there's going to be 0. So I think there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on this type of technology. Jokes aside.
I had the chance to meet the co-founder of GM Cruise a few years ago, and that was one of the biggest things that he kept hammering home, was that it's not enough for us. Now we're on tangents here, but he's saying it's not enough for us to be twice as safe. We need to be 100 times safer than a human driver. To be able to do for the public to accept. That a robot, that an artificial intelligence system is actually, their life is in its hands, and accidents caused by AI are much less acceptable socially. So that's one of those sort of weird lines where we should, in theory, be able to say, yeah, it's twice as safe, but people won't accept that because that means far too many deaths that are caused by something other than a person. It's a lot easier for people to accept human error.
Beautiful answer, guys. Thank you so much. I hope it answered your question, Eric.
Yes, I appreciate it. That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking your question. For the listeners, really quick, I think we're going to go for 10, 15 more minutes. I just wanted to keep it for 1 hour. I got one more question in my DM right now, and wanted to get your take, guys, on this trends such as social commerce. It's been a while. It's been around for a while, and this is the platform that allows you to sell your products, and it's sort of becoming like our shopping mall as well. So I just wanted to get your take on the potential of this industry to disrupt retail. What do you guys think? And maybe any of the players that you're particularly looking at, and you think that they have the potential to take advantage of this trend.
So to clarify, by social commerce, we're talking about, essentially retail sales driven by the use of social media, correct?
Yes.
Dan, I feel like Dan and Matt, I feel like you guys could offer a lot on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have your Pinterest of the world, which is just a product I don't like. So I understand that it has some good business metrics, but I'm clearly not the customer. But I do think it's going to be more subtle than that, that what we buy is going to be, and is certainly in my son, I have a 17-year-old son, his generation, the social is affecting that more. But I don't think that's that different than trends and wearing, I don't know, getting the Rachel haircut from Friends because it was popular. That's not a haircut any of us could pull off, but you get what I'm saying. So I do think there's a lot of potential on the big players. So your Twitters and your Facebooks are going to integrate this more and more and more. But your niche players like your Pinterest are going to be drivers in specialty areas, selling wedding items. But do I think it's going to disrupt traditional retail? No, I actually think it's going to drive traffic. I think your Targets and Walmarts, and we saw Walmart tried to buy TikTok. I think you're going to see those players invest really heavily in this. And the problem is it's really difficult to do it and have it not be clumsy. I don't know how many times you watch some influencer, maybe you're watching to learn how to fix something in your house, and the product placements or the endorsements are really, really obvious. So I think we'll get better at this. There'll be some AI help with this as well, but I think it's an add-on. I think it's a nice benefit. I don't think you're gonna stop going to Target because it's easy to buy things on Facebook. Says the guy who's bought a lot of dumb things on Facebook because they've done a good job targeting them. I have at least 8 different phone chargers that I bought through social influencers, not people so much as really good ads. Matt, your thoughts here?
Yeah, so I would say I'm pretty bullish on social commerce. I think it'll be almost like a whole other channel for retail, almost like e-commerce is today. And when retailers, like in the not too distant future, when they talk about omni-channel, like where they need like a presence in brick and mortar and e-commerce, they're also going to need a presence in social commerce. I mean, like real quick, like Facebook, like 1 billion people go to Facebook's marketplace every month. I mean, that thing has just taken off, and it's hardly ever talked about. But people like knowing who they're buying from. And Facebook offers that. In like Facebook shops, like they now have 1 million monthly active shops. I think it was 250 million monthly visitors to those shops. So that's huge. And then you can talk about YouTube. YouTube is huge for retailers. And like Max, we just talked about Sunday, like what Google's doing on their shopping tab, and how Google has like these synergies that's really hard for other platforms to match. Like they did this poll, and I'm just bringing it up real quick now. These are my notes that we shared Sunday, Max, was like 55% of consumers search for a product on Google and then use YouTube as a tool to learn more about it. And then almost 75% of shoppers said they switch between online search and video when researching products to buy online. And then after watching a video, consumers stated they used Google search to compare prices and find out where to buy the product and learn more about a product. So I think Facebook and Google, especially, you do have those other niche players like Pinterest, but Facebook and Google, I think, have huge opportunities to exploit this. And I think they know that, and I think they will.
What do you guys think about how Shopify fits into all of this?
Well, Shopify makes it easy for small merchants to plug into all of this, right? So like we talked, like Max, I mean, we just talked about like Sunday, like how Shopify now like lets it's whatever it has, like 1.7 million merchants, like you can feature all their products on Google with just a few clicks, right? And that's on YouTube, that's on shopping, that's on search, um and same thing with Square, by the way, and that's even like going to be included on Google Maps, right? Where like Google's agreement with Square allows like those Square for retail sellers to like add all their item catalog to Google's surfaces, all their tabs, the search, the shopping, the images, the maps, the YouTube. So I think like those platforms allow small merchants to participate in all of this, and that's really like Facebook's and Google's like opportunity for the small businesses, right? I mean, it's not like Amazon or Walmart needs this nearly as much as the mom and pop store on the corner or the boutique fashion shop in your downtown in your local city. They need these platforms for that reach, and these platforms make it really easy for these small entrepreneurs, these small businesses who don't have that technical know-how, who don't have those huge IT departments to participate in the digital economy.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. Shopify is the great equalizer. So only a few companies, Amazon, Target, Walmart, that might be the list, will be able to achieve full scale with logistics and shipping and getting you things really quickly. Shopify is going to be that solution for just about everybody else because there's only so many companies that can offer all of this at scale. And Shopify has invested so heavily in that, and that'll play out on the social platforms as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know I'm very excited, and I think a lot of people think that Shopify does only business with small, medium businesses, but they've been very impressive with their Shopify Plus department as well. So landing huge and large enterprises as well. So I'm very excited what they have in store for us in the future. We're already like 56 minutes in. I just wanted to bring in really quick Wolf and see if he has any questions as well. Wolf, are you with us?
Yes, sir. Appreciate you bringing me into it. Thank you, Max. I do have a question. And my question was surrounding option trading, and I know that you give out stock investment advice. Do any of your clients maybe request your thoughts on option trades based on some of the advice, right? You're planning something long term, short term. Just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a challenging. Thank you, Wolf, for this question. It's a challenging one because it's so personalized. First of all, options is difficult. I do options trading. I think that's very hard for people to follow someone else's options trades exactly how they're doing it. Investing itself is just such a personal thing in the first place. Oh, Steve, could you put yourself on mute for just a second, Steve? Unless you want to jump. Okay, Steve, did you want to jump in with something there? Okay, sorry. Yeah, it's such a tough one to replicate. I think is my opinion on this. I think that options can complement equities in a great way. Low risk options, especially synthetic longs, are a great way to leverage your upfront or your overall returns with less upfront capital. But again, I almost discourage other people trying to mimic someone else's options trade just because there's so many different variables that are going into that. If you do options incorrectly, even with what seems to be conservative strategy, sometimes can blow up on people and put you in a terrible financial shape. And you can have margin calls and owe people a lot of money in a very short amount of time. So I encourage, if you do want to do options trading, make sure you're doing your homework, make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. And I really don't like the idea of just kind of following others into options trades. There's a lot that can go wrong with those. Personally, in my opinion, personally.
Cool.
Yeah, and I'd echo everything that Simon just said. Several members of our team, we do use options occasionally as sort of a supplement to our long-term equities investments, but it's one of those things that needs to happen with experienced investors who know exactly the risks they're taking. I see a lot of irresponsible options trading, just very, very risky. May as well be buying a lottery ticket in some cases. But that's not to say it can't be a powerful tool in the hands of the right investor. But like Simon said, they're so hard to replicate. They can be so volatile as well that it's very difficult to follow somebody else's options advice. It's one of those things where I've seen. We've all been writing about investing and talking about investing publicly for a long time, right? And I've seen for the better part of the decade, people even take simple equities advice and they bring it to the extreme, right? Where I say, I buy this stock, and I've had people say, well, hey, thanks so much for that advice. My parents put all their money into it and now they're retiring early, right? And I'm like, oh my God, like this is terrifying. And so people do tend to really kind of amplify advice like that. So it's something that you need to tread carefully. And like Simon said, if you do your homework, options trading can be a really, really interesting way to do it. But you do need to understand the risks. Yeah.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Steve. Thank you, Simon.
Yeah, I'm probably one of the very, very few people on Fitbit who actually don't do any option trading at all, sticking with equities.
I don't do any option trading. It's just there's enough excitement with equities. I don't need the added complication. That said, a lot of people on our team do at least dabble in it.
Same. Like I don't do options. I don't short stocks. I find plenty of enjoyment and excitement and returns just from long only.
Yeah, I don't short stocks either. For me, it feels like betting against people's jobs. It's just, I don't know. I don't feel good about it.
Oh, it's very good to know, guys. I thought it's just me in the theater. It's not that alone in this club. That's good to know. Well, we're right at 8 o'clock, so I just wanted to be really respectful of our speaker's time. I am asked for only 1 hour. So just to wrap up really quick, Wolf, do you have any additional questions you wanted to ask or anything to add?
I do have at some point a quick announcement about a space tomorrow. For this, I would just say, a question I would say for Simon and Matt and all the guys is, we have a good amount of listeners on here. Maybe I know that your service, the money is changing, the amount you're charging. I don't know if it's changed yet. Maybe we just let everyone know kind of the details around the service and where they could sign up for that.
Yeah, thanks very much, Wolf, for this opportunity. And thank you, Andre. Andre just sent me a message saying, what do I get for the $17? To some background on this, as you mentioned, Wolf, on July 7th, so 7/7, the price of our 7Investing membership will increase to $49 a month. We have a world-class stock picking team here. This is an incredible team. We're really looking at some innovative things. We're not just throwing tickers out there. We're really doing some innovative research into how markets are changing. And we've noticed that a lot of people that are not familiar with 7Investing, when they see $17 a month, are thinking we're an entry-level service. And we don't think that that really reflects the true value of this service. And so, as you mentioned, on July 7th, we're going to increase the price to $49 a month or $399 a year. But Wolf, there is also an important caveat for this as well, which is if you sign up today or anytime before July 7th, so anytime this month or those first couple of days of July, we're going to lock in the rate that we currently have of $17 a month. And that will be good for as long as you have an active membership with 7Investing. So if you're still with 7Investing 5 years in the future, the question always comes up, are you really not going to raise my price if I sign up today? That is correct. We are locking anybody who signs in at $17 at our current rates. And we're doing that because we're thankful, we're grateful for everyone who's helped us grow this business.
And this is exclusively for listeners of these spaces.
For you, Max, for you specifically, yes. But it is something we are going to lock in rates for anybody who signs up for the 7th. I think that $17 a month for 7 stock picks from the innovative team that we have of advisors is, in my opinion, the best deal on the internet. I'm really excited about what we're doing.
And let me point out, Simon, it's more than just 7 picks. So for each pick, we do anywhere from 2,000 to 3,500 word write up. We also record a video pitch where I take my stock and I pitch it to the team, and everybody can ask questions. So you don't just get to see my bull case, you get to see everybody try to poke holes in it and how I answer it. So it's an enormous amount of information. Then we also do every month a call for new members so they can ask us how the service works, how they can use it. Then after that, we do a 90-minute subscriber call where people can ask us about our picks. Of course, we also do our free live stream, which airs Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon, which you can find in our YouTube channel or on our Twitter. That is at 7Investing. But of course, if you want to subscribe, that is 7investing.com/subscribe. We've made it very easy. And thank you all.
Yeah, and like Dan says, I mean, we're really trying to encourage people to be long-term investors, really understand the stocks that they're investing in. And we're being transparent about our returns, at 7investing.com/recommendations. Every single one of our picks for the world to see how well every single one of them is doing in real time. And we're going to hold our feet to the fire and say, hey, if we're going to say these are our best companies and our best picks every month, we should be putting that out there and scoring ourselves accordingly.
100%. Max, can I talk about this space that's happening tomorrow for 1 second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm very excited for the space that I have tomorrow. It's honestly been a long time in the works. Two very exclusive guests. I have never seen them on a space before. I think they may have done one, and that is going to be Hugh Henney, and that's at Hugh_Henney and at Dip Deity. They are the dynamic duo hosts of the PGIR, that is Pennies Going In Raw podcast. That is the #1 stock market podcast on Spotify. And they will be coming on a space tomorrow night at 8 p.m. EST. As I am talking, I literally just posted the post about it, and I'm going to put out an RSVP link too. So if anybody wants to hear a little bit more about their background, some of their hot takes on different stocks, that'll be tomorrow night at 8 p.m. But I really, really enjoyed this space tonight. And also Josh is here, which means this space was recorded, and I will try to have it up on the Wolf YouTube and the Spotify within 36 hours.
That was a perfect way to close and a perfect announcement. I will definitely do my best to be there and learn from the guys from the podcast. So that was great. Just wanted to say thank you so much for our speakers taking the time to share their knowledge with us. Simon, Matthew, Daniel, Steve, Wolf, thank you so much, guys. We'll appreciate it. And I hope we will be able to do something of this nature in the future as well.
Thanks very much for having us, Max. We had a great time.
Indeed. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys. Take care.